Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have my lovely guest, Paul, who is going to represent all ISTJs out there. He has a YouTube channel called The Catholic Gaming Nerd that I personally have learned so much about the ISTJ personality by watching his videos. He goes relatively in depth about certain ways that they approach life that I find it fascinating that I also see represented in the ISTJs in my life. So, Paul, thank you for being here.
My
You want to,
pleasure.
yeah, tell everyone who you are?
Well, first off, my name's Paul, as previously stated. You all know I own a YouTube channel, but I used to be a janitor for a living. It was exactly 3 years and 3 months, by the way, because I kept track of the day I was hired. In my spare time, I love video games. I have the Switch 2 right here, and I've been thoroughly enjoying it. I love trivia, so I love compiling random facts and just telling everyone, did you know this? Did you know that? And I love experiences. Like, I love sharing my favorite stories about, like, oh, 15 years ago on this day of the week. I love doing all that. So you get me reminiscing, and I'm going to come across as an ENFP.
All right, so we're gonna begin with the first question, which is honestly the most asked question that I saw on most like websites about ISTJs. Again, Paul, no pressure, but you're speaking for all ISTJs out there.
All of them.
As an ISTJ, are you aware of how boring you sound?
Yeah, because most of my friends are intuitives, so
Really?
they're always asking me to shake things up and do something different, and I'm like, why? And they can never provide a good explanation. They don't give me a good source. They don't give me even a good emotional reason. Like, it just seems like they're just making stuff up. And I'm like, that's not a convincing argument whatsoever. And then, like, when I present why I'm consistent and boring, it's like usually like from a practical perspective. Like, I'll say, why should I change my diet when my doctor approves of it? If I continue with this method, I'm getting adequate exercise, saving on money, I'm comfortable, getting a better sleep. Like, there's all these practical benefits that come with my lifestyle that makes it so that if I were to change it for novelty's sake, I probably wouldn't have the budget, wouldn't have the time, probably get overweight, like
Mm.
being being healthy is a big deal for me, and it just takes too long to explain that whole process that I just did to you. So I just let people.
You got time, bro.
Well, I just explained it to you, but I'm saying, like, to the average person, I don't want to go around to every single person who asks me that question and say, by the way, did you know that I'm boring because of this? I did it for you because of the channel.
Do you think you're boring?
No. Well, no, I don't think I'm boring because, like I told you before we started this recording, most of my friends are intuitives and a lot of them are NPs. And so being around them a lot has really encouraged me to develop extroverted intuition a lot more. For those of you that don't know what that means, basically, like, I think I'm more open to new ideas than I was in my childhood. I wanted to do everything exactly the same when I was a kid. Like, I'd play Ocarina of Time, I'd have the exact route through Hyrule completely mapped. But I've
I
learned
did
to,
the
like,
opposite.
I'm sorry.
I did the opposite. When I played Ocarina of Time or A Link to the Past, I used to see whether I can skip certain dungeons and then come back to previous dungeons to see like what I could get away with in order and still finish the game.
Well, now I do that.
Nice.
But
Okay.
before I had my NP friends, no way, not a chance. But I've since learned I try to, like, switch up my videos a little bit. I try to, like, come up with new ideas that no one's ever heard of. Like, for example, I made a video called Deltarune Chapter 3 referenced Putt Putt joins the parade. And I did the research, and I am the very first person on the internet to make that connection.
Okay. All right.
So the NPs have taught me.
Mm-hmm.
They've done a good job. So if you are NPs out there, um, you guys may be ditzy and scatterbrained, but you get me to step outside my comfort zone.
How does it feel when you step outside of your comfort zone?
Terrifying. It's
Really?
uh it's well, I wouldn't say it's my absolute worst fear, but, like, the unknown is something that scares me a lot. And so whenever I don't have like the logistics or the details for something, I have no clue what I'm doing. When it comes to stuff like hangouts and meetings, I don't particularly care. But if I'm like going on vacation or something, if I don't know the travel time, if I don't know the sleeping arrangements, where the shower is, that stuff, I am freaking out, both inwardly and outwardly. I don't know how to explain it. I think it's just because I like my comfort and I like familiarity. I get a dopamine rush from it, which the scientific principle of dopamine is that everyone gets dopamine rushes from different things. So I don't think there's an adequate way of explaining why I get dopamine from consistency. That's just the way my brain works, and if your brain works differently, I can't force you to be like me, but if you want to know like a definitive, give me a short answer as to why you like to do the same thing over and over again, I say dopamine.
Dopamine. So it actually feels good. Like I'm an INTJ, I'm a dumbass, right? So I'm gonna use like basic words. It feels good to do the like help me finish the sentence. It feels good to seek comfort, or it feels good to
It feels
do
good to do the same thing over and over again. Like it feels good to say, I've been sitting in the same chair for 15 years and I'm not stopping anytime soon. It feels good to say I've had this long hair for so long, like, and I usually keep track of the years and everything. Like, I just love the consistency so much.
and when something goes awry, like a jar or whatever the terminology might be, it causes stress.
Oh yeah. But if it's backed up by the facts, it's typically easier for me to accept. Like if someone gives me research that says, "Hey Paul, you do realize that your diet probably could be healthier." I'd be like, "Oh, that's pretty good research. I think that is a good reason to switch up my routine a bit." Or if someone says like, "Hey Paul, did you know that if you keep drinking a Celsius twice a week, that'll cause you to have an early death?" I just made that up. But
Yeah.
if someone were to say
Sure.
that and provide like evidence to support their claim, then I would say, "Oh, there goes that routine."
Mhm. So then, like, how do you initially determine or develop a routine? Because, like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? In order for you to have a routine, you have to have thought of a routine for it to be comfortable, right? Like, where does it originate from?
I'm the type of person that thinks best in examples. So let me present an example and see if you can spot the pattern. So one of my routines right now is twice a week, I like to go to the gym, and when I'm done with my workout, I like to drink a Celsius. How that started was I used to work at that gym,
Mm.
and the hours that they gave me were tiring, to put it lightly. And so I was so fatigued and I was moving so slow that I went to my boss and I said, "Hey, would it be okay if for 30 minutes of my shift I can get an unpaid lunch break?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, that's totally fine." And it was always on a Friday that I would get the unpaid lunch break because that's when I'd have the longest day. And so during that lunch break, I got thirsty when I was having my lunch, and I thought to myself, if I only get this once a week, I want to make it special, and I don't just want to drink water. So what I think I'll do is I'll go to the dollar store and see like what's the cheapest thing that they have besides fruit juice. And I saw this drink called a Celsius, and I said, "Ooh, this looks good." And then I loved it so much that it became my favorite drink. And so that became something that would make me be able to get through the week is I'd say if I get through this week, then I get a Celsius. And Celsiuses are healthy and they taste good. And it's like kind of like a motivation to keep going. And after I was let go of that job, I started to miss having my Celsius breaks. So then I decided that I would like adjust the routine so that it could return in a creative way. So I said, okay, I may not get the lunch break anymore, but I'm still a member. So I'll use that same lobby with the same chair and I will get the same Celsius and continue the tradition.
That is fascinating. That is utterly fascinating.
How
And
so?
as an INTJ, I honestly, I can't say I have routines or like, comfort in routines or things that makes me feel that way. Like every experience is always a new experience for me, even though it stems from something that previously happened before. If I drink coffee today, it's not that, oh, I'm drinking coffee because of what happened like previously, how I felt previously. It's like, oh, today I think it will feel good. Today I think
Mm.
I will enjoy the taste, you know? So it's like I'm pretty sure, being human, there is connection between your past, right? I know coffee tastes good or coffee elicits this type of like cognitive response, but my reasoning behind actually doing it doesn't usually tie to anything that's happened before. Almost every single experience is unique in itself. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, like the reasoning is something other than just because it's a tradition.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would say that one thing that I think differentiates me from the ESTJs is that they tend to push traditions onto other people, and their traditions tend to be like societal traditions. Like they're all about like, oh, it's President's Day, make
I
sure
love
you honor
this.
your presidents. Whereas for me, I don't give a darn about that stuff. I just want my personal traditions. I don't enforce them on anyone else. I say, these are my traditions, these are my routines. I don't expect you guys to follow them. Just don't try to stop me.
So, since we're on the topic of personalizing your routine, do you believe that you are vocal enough to other people to let them know, hey, this is how I operate within the sphere of whatever I want to do? Like, don't stop me. And if you try to stop me, you will get a nasty side of me.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah, I am vocal to a fault where my friends actually sometimes get agitated, where they're just like, can't you bend at least a little bit? And at first, when I was younger, I would say like, absolutely not. But as I've gotten older, and like I said, most of my friends are intuitives, I've learned that there's strength in compromise, and I'm the type of person that's fiercely loyal to my friends, and I want to make sure that people get along. So I'll say like, okay, how about this? How about like to give an example, again, I think in examples. There was one time I was going on vacation to visit my friend Isabel, and a mutual friend of ours came along, and the mutual friend's an ESFP, Isabel's an INFJ. You know your functions, that means they're extroverted sensors. I'm an introverted sensor. So I like my familiarity, they like their novelty. They were all like, we want to go to all these local restaurants that we've never ever tried before and just experience all these exotic dishes. And I was like, get me out of here. I just want McDonald's. So they compromised and they said, okay, how about this? We'll go to McDonald's and we'll let you eat at McDonald's, but then we will eat at those restaurants. But we'll just watch each other eat so that we can still like not leave anyone out.
So you're okay with compromise.
To an extent, as long as my routine doesn't get completely shattered.
Okay. In that scenario, let's tweak a few things. Let's say that you went to McDonald's, but they were closed,
Mm.
and there wasn't like in this scenario, right? The next McDonald's is like probably like 100 miles away or something. Then would you have been okay with trying out the restaurants that your friends recommended, or would you more lean towards the, oh, I don't want to do anything anymore?
I think that that's highly unlikely that there wouldn't be something similar to a McDonald's.
Okay,
Like,
the similarity is
yeah, like if there was, for example, an exotic restaurant that had a cheeseburger, I would probably say, well, you know what, that's close enough to McDonald's. I've always said that, like, I've heard it said that introverted sensing is the most abstract and confusing function, which is weird because I'm not much of an abstract person. But
I agree
if
with that actually.
if I had to describe it in one sentence that I think the intuitives will understand, it's introverted sensing is just intuition backwards. We look at the big picture of the past rather than the future. So we look at how is everything in the past connected, and how do the things we see in the present, not the future, the present, how is that similar to what's happened before? Whereas for intuitives, it's like, how can we take what happens now and apply it to the future?
Yep. So then, like when you start thinking about the past, you ever feel like you're in it for too long?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
I tend to get bogged down by the past, and I'm wondering like, oh, I said something that stupid when I was 15, and that was just a random example, but I will usually be able to pinpoint how old I was where I was standing and who I was talking to and just say, how could I make such a stupid mistake? And then I apologized to my friends and they're like, oh, completely forgot about all.
Like it's really interesting you bring that up because I have an ISTJ that won't get over something that happened in the past as well. I don't perceive it as negative. I don't think she perceives it as negative, but it's something that she continuously goes back to on occasion. And I've noticed that it also stops her from doing anything that's remotely close to that because of what happened in the past. Regardless of how many times I'm trying to reassure her, letting her know, hey, this is different because of these variables. It's different because, it's a different time frame, we're different people. But then there's something that's in her mind that's like blocking her. Can you help explain what that is?
Fear of repeating the past, because to us, the past is constant. It's kind of like chronic pain. It just doesn't go away.
Mm.
And if I had to compare it to your function stack, I'd probably say it's about equivalent of how I don't think you'll ever lose sight of your goals. You're just constantly thinking, this is what I want to accomplish, whereas we say this is what we accomplished with just as much clarity, if not more, because the past definitively happened, whereas the future could be different because it hasn't happened yet.
This is actually interesting because I remember responding to a comment about this. It was an ISTJ and we had like this little mini thread going, and they asked about NI. Like what exactly is introverted intuition and how it affects the INTJ, and how are we so certain that it will play out that way? And the misconception about introverted intuition is that we know exactly how it's going to end up. That is absolutely false. We have an idea of the range, this like where about within a cluster of potential possibilities where it could potentially show up, but we don't understand the details because we don't know what the details are, because it is very ignorant for us to assume that certain details stay consistent long enough for it to be effective or to have an effect on whatever the future is. And then the other part of it, I remember the ICJ asking me, like, like doesn't that cause you concern that you might be wrong? And my answer to that was, no, that's the fun part about it. I want to be wrong sometimes. Like like if it's a negative thing, I want to be wrong. If it's, I'll also want to be pleasantly surprised that I was wrong. Like, oh, I think of it in a negative term, but actually it's positive. Oh, okay. Maybe I need to readjust how I view the future based off of this because there's, some type of data that I was missing. I don't know if that's something similar to how you guys introverted sensing feel it. And then like the question that I have when it comes down to introverted sensing is, it's different. Like it's a perceiving function, so it's very difficult for most people to grasp who aren't led by a perception or like the perceiving function. How does the past change for a person with introverted sensing to grow by consistently revisiting a certain scenario?
If we have reassurance that our intuitive friends, forget about it. That's how we move on from it.
Really?
Like if I talk to, say, an ENFP that I hurt in the past,
Mhm.
and the ENFP is just like, dude, I forgot what I had for breakfast, so I have no clue what happened. And I'll be like, oh, good. Now I don't have to worry about it. But if there's even the tiniest inkling of pain or lasting consequences from the past, I don't think we'll ever be able to move on.
And that's something that you determine or is validated by an outside source? Or do they have to convince you that they forgot about it?
They have to convince me, yeah, because I've noticed that, like, with INFJs in particular, they're usually willing to lie for the sake of keeping the peace. And so as a result, it's hard for me to take anything they say as a straight answer. So even if they say something like to give you a stupid example, if a female INFJ were to come up to me and say, by the way, Paul, I'm a girl, I wouldn't believe her. I would look for some kind of external scientific explanation because I'd be like, I think you're just saying that to make me feel better. I want to know the facts. I want to know the biology. I want to
What
know
if
the
you smell
science.
good? All girls smell good. Come on.
As someone who goes to the gym a lot, that's not necessarily true.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, so you wouldn't take other people's words for face value.
If it's an intuitive type, I wouldn't. If it's a sensing type, I absolutely would. Because I know that they're more aware of their surroundings, whereas intuitives go by vibes, and vibes can't always be proven.
Hmm.
So like someone could say like, I see you as a good person, and I'll be like, yeah, but can you objectively prove that I'm a good person? And as I've gotten older, I've realized that most of my friends, how do I word this? Like my ENFP friends, they love, just absolutely love what I call emotion vomiting. And in their case, they like to go on and on about how much they like me. And at first, I didn't really like that because I was like, are you sure you're even telling the truth? And eventually, she got really mad at me. She said, Paul, I know it sounds like I'm just tripping over my words and saying a bunch, but I want you to know that I mean every single word. And then I started to think, okay, that might have hurt her feelings, have been a bit harsh, because as I've gotten older, I've realized people's feelings do matter. So I started thinking maybe I should pay attention to what she's saying, try to like slow it down in my brain and think, is there some kind of consistency to what she said? And then I would say, oh, that is consistent. And then eventually I started believing her.
How does consistency work if it's the first time? So you mentioned that if it's a sensor friend or someone that you perceive to be a sensor, you are more willing to accept their word. If you believe that person's an intuitive, you're less likely to accept their words. Why?
Because they go by something that's either abstract or something that can't be tangibly proven. So like they might
Why does it
say
have to be
like,
tangibly proven? Like
well,
if it's true to them, right? Like why does it have to be tangibly proven to you? You know, does that make sense?
well, because people, I'm sure you know that there's a scientific law that says like every emotion is valid, but not every emotion is true. Like for example, a depressed person might say, I feel like the world is against me, but that doesn't mean the world is actually against them. It's just what's going on in their brain.
Yep, yep, yep.
And with intuitives, the language that they use makes it sound like they're giving the example that I just gave about like the I feel like the world is against me, as opposed to making some kind of definitive statement. Maybe it's just that I'm a grammar Nazi and I'm just not noticing the words that they use, but the way that they describe things just doesn't sound factual. It
Mhm.
sounds like they're either making it up or they're just going off of a gut feeling. And then I say like, okay, explain this gut feeling. What are your grounds for believing this? And then they never know how to explain, especially if they're INFJs. INFJs are probably the worst when it comes to explaining themselves.
I'm not going to comment on that. I think the other question I have then is I agree with you completely that, like every emotion is valid, but not every emotion is true. You know, as an INTJ with extroverted thinking and introverted feeling in the same slot placement as an ISTJ, I feel like we're relatively similar when it comes down to the balance of logic and emotions.
Hmm.
I think what differentiates us is perception and the theory of perception. As an INTJ, and then just me naturally, I've been reading this book by this professor from UC Davis or UC Berkeley, I forgot. And his book's called the interface theory of perception. Is that perception is based off of like the individual, but that it's also based off of genes and like what was inherited and all. But there is benefit to looking at the world um, through sensory focused eyes, and there is benefit that but looking at it from an intuitive focus viewpoint, right? It still confuses me, and it probably is the NISI placement, right? That like if someone says something and it's like, oh, from a feeling things, if they are saying it and if they feel like they mean it, right? Like, yeah, it's just very it's interesting to me that it's so difficult for you not to take it just for face value or to at least come to the conclusion that I don't know what this person is like their rationality behind it, but I will accept that they feel what they're saying, you know?
Well, I think with ENFPs, I think I've gotten to the point where I believe them because ENFPs are my shadow type. So it's like, you know what? They may be all over the place, but I can pick up on what they're trying to say because I'm seeing the mutual functions here. And I know that introverted feeling is very it's all about authenticity. And I can tell that even if their words don't make sense, they mean every single word because that's exactly what I do. Like, I don't have a fake bone in my body, literally or figuratively.
Okay.
Unless if you count the funny bone.
Hmm. Is it really funny though? Mine has never told a joke. It's I think it's really interesting. You actually made me realize something that your opposite type is the and I don't know if you believe in like golden pair, right, rule, but your opposite type, the ENFP, is like the ideal type for an INTJ because NI thing, and then my opposite type, the ESFP, is like the ideal type for your type, the like SE and SI combination.
Yikes.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if I'd ever want to be like an ESFP. They're way too do it without thinking about it first, which
Hmm.
can cause some clashes at times, but at the very least I can understand what they're saying.
Hmm. So how does it feel when you don't understand what someone's saying? Like if it's too intuitive or there's too much of a lack of sensing? I don't know what word I'm looking for.
Well, first I get a headache, a literal headache, not a
Mm.
metaphorical one.
Okay.
And then I interpret it literally, and then I say, that doesn't make any sense with what they're actually trying to say. Like, for example, when you said there's value in seeing the world through sensors' eyes, I was like, is there a scientific principle that says that my eyeballs are actually different than yours? And then I was like, that can't be what he means by that. That must be a metaphor. So, like, I have to, like, take steps to
Yeah.
realize that you're not speaking literally.
You're talking to an INTJ, man. I live in metaphors. So I apologize
No,
if it
that's
doesn't.
okay. Like I said, most of my friends are intuitive, so I'm starting to get used to like, oh, they're using figures of speech again. And sometimes, like, because I'm around them so much, sometimes I will try to use that against them as a way of like showcasing how it feels to me. Like, I might start talking about the multiverse out of nowhere, and they're like, you do realize you're talking nonsense, aren't you? And I'm like, of course,
We
because
love,
that's how
you
you
know we
guys
love
talk.
that, right? You know we
Sorry?
love when you do that.
Could you
I
say
love it.
that again?
I love it when my ISTJs or ISFJs start saying nonsense like that. It's like, oh, all right, you're finally in my world. Let's keep going.
Except that when I try to do it, it makes my intuitive friends laugh. Because they're like, you do realize you have no idea what you're saying. You're just trying to sound like us.
Mhm. Are they aware of cognitive functions? Are they aware of like Myers-Briggs?
Most of them are. The ones that aren't, I think all they care about is they care about consistency within the friendship. So, like, they'll point out nostalgic moments. I'm specifically talking about my ENFP friends here. They'll specifically talk about, like, oh, Paul, I know that this is your favorite food. I know that you like to wear this shirt when you're hanging out with us. They pay attention to details within our friendship that mean a lot to them. And to them, that they care more about that than Myers-Briggs because they like their personal connections. And my INFJ friends can kind of be like that too. Like they like Myers-Briggs, but like according to Linda Behrens, they are one of only two judging types that are interest over systematic. So that means that sometimes they'll just, I'm sorry,
Which two types?
INFJs and ENFJs, the only two types that are judging types that aren't systematic.
Yeah, because their blind spot is extroverted thinking, or at least
Yeah.
yeah,
So they will like deny the Myers-Briggs if it's convenient or if it doesn't work for a certain person. Like they're totally willing to say like in this instance it makes no sense that you have blind spot extroverted feeling because you are you, you're not an ISTJ, you are Paul, you're an individual, and you won't catch any of the other judging types talking like that to that extent.
yeah, Barnum effect. They believe they know more, even though they know less.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that introverted thinking of theirs is like, oh my gosh, that's the most pitiful logical argument I've ever heard. But you can't convince them otherwise because it's
great.
subjective.
Since we're on the topic of introverted thinking, let's hear how extroverted thinking. Like, what's your relationship with extroverted thinking? I call her mama, by the way. Like, extroverted thinking for me is mama. My mom will tell me what I need to do. Right? How does extroverted thinking affect you?
It just means that I'm very empathetic to what the experts say, what the books say, and what other people are thinking, but not how they're feeling. I know that some people, including my mom, are like, how can you say that what you think and what you feel are two different things? They just don't grasp the concept. And I say feelings are based on emotions, thoughts are based on more like understanding how things work. So, for example, if someone says, "Hey Paul, your video quality is insufficient. It should be 1080p." That's a thought. But if someone says, "Hey, that hurt my feelings," I'll say, "But why did it hurt your feelings? What does that even mean?" So you see how I'm questioning the feelings, but as soon as someone brings up a thought, I'm just like, "Oh, heck yeah," and then I try to accommodate it.
Do you ever feel like you create your own TI logic?
If I do, I usually downplay it. Like I'll say like, "Now wait a minute. I need to go by the facts. I can't just be making up logic out of thin air like the ENTPs do. I need to go with what's objective."
I'm glad you said that because I actually made a video not so long ago about how INTJs, similar to ISTJs, because we have extroverted thinking, where it is, we analyze logic. It's I don't think I can ever definitively say that there's a logical framework that I created myself because I feel like I pick and choose what makes the most sense. That that what makes the most sense from other logic that's been created by other people. And even if I do create my own logic, right, I don't trust that it came from me because I feel like it probably stemmed from something else that was built upon that I unknowingly built. I don't know how you feel about that.
I think I know what you're talking about, but how I would word it is I always feel ashamed of myself whenever I do come to a logical conclusion because I realize that I don't have the credentials to be the smartest person in the world. So I
Yes.
say, why should my logic be valued as the absolute truth when objectively I would fail an IQ test or I could be wrong? I don't like risking being wrong, so I just say, well, let's just talk to people who are learned. I guess like if I were to use an example, I wouldn't trust a plumber if I had problems with the roof. I wouldn't trust a janitor if I was having troubles with my computer. I would want an expert to be able to verify the information rather than just being like, well, I think that it makes sense to me, so therefore it's true. That's why I have trouble getting along with the TP and FJ types because I'm just like, you guys are just making that up. There's like no like it's consistent to you, but that doesn't mean it's consistent to everyone else.
You don't find it fun to just watch them do it and see where it leads them?
Sometimes it feels like it's to their detriment, though. Like, for
Yeah.
example, I know an INFJ that's struggling to pay the rent, but because she's religious, and at this time of year, there's this thing called the Feast of Tabernacles that she observes, she is putting off looking for a way to fix the rent because of her interpretation of what she thinks the Bible said. Whereas I would say, like, you're willing to put your survival on hold based on your own interpretation of this written word. And I'm a Catholic, so of course I believe what the Bible says too, but I also know objectively you can't take it at face value because it wasn't written with 21st century reasoning. You have to take it based on authorial intent, and you have to base it on historical context, and if the writing is poetry, then that's its own thing. And she doesn't do that. She just says, well, the Bible says to do it, so therefore I do it. And I don't look at the context, and I'm just like, girl, you're sabotaging your life because of that subjective logic.
Do you believe that like I understand that like your friend is like and we're using your friend again as an example because they're unable to pay the bills that they won't be able to bounce back and be able to pay the bills after she's done doing her own interpretation of whatever they believe should work out. You know what I mean? I think my question is, do you believe that as a friend, that is your responsibility to make sure that she is taking care of the bills?
Obviously, that's what I want, but I also value respecting people's boundaries. And she has said that she doesn't want me giving her advice unless she asks for it. So I just shut up whenever she brings up that stuff.
How does that
And
feel to watch people self-sabotage when if they just followed your advice, that it wouldn't happen?
makes me feel like I'm useless. Because I'm the type of person that I want to be the most dependable person in the universe. Like, if you need me to wake up at 5 in the morning to do anything for you, even if it's emotional support, like, I want to be there and do whatever I can. And sometimes it can feel demotivating when other people don't want to take advantage of that. the way I describe it, if someone were to give you a check for $1 million, would you just shred it and throw it in the toilet?
Hell no. I'd buy it.
Exactly. And I'm the type of person that like I have proven over time that when I say something, I mean it. Like if I say I'm gonna be there at 3 o'clock, you can bet I'll be there at 3 o'clock on the dot.
I will say that is the biggest compliment I could give ISTJs. You guys are the most dependable and most reliable type out there. Reliable to a fault, honestly, right? Like, because it's so different. Like, as an INTJ, I want to be reliable too, but I kind of want to be the last line of defense. It's like I want you to make your own mistakes. I want you to do this, right? But then once you get to a certain point where you've exhausted all the ways that you can think of in order to make something happen, then come to me, right? Then let's start engaging in like more practical ways of doing this because it makes me happy when people are creative when solving issues. Well, ISTJs, I feel like you guys are always there for people, like whether the people know it or not. And also, when you guys are there, you guys are fully there, even if you guys don't agree with it. I don't know if and by the way, for those that are watching this video, this is our second time recording this. We recorded the first time like months ago, and like I messed up. Paul's back. I appreciate it. The thing about ISTJs that I still cannot wrap my head around, and then like help me understand this, is the sense of duty and loyalty. As an INTJ, I'm very loyal to the people that I'm loyal to, and I do have a sense of duty in whatever I put value in, right? But if I'm in a relationship that I feel like just isn't good for me, isn't good for my growth, I am more willing to leave that relationship than an ICJ that is in a similar relationship where they are similarly feeling a certain level of not necessarily regret, but like you know what I mean. Like, if you're in a relationship, even though if you know that it could be better if you leave, you're still willing to like go through the trenches because of this sense of like I don't know what it is. Like, do you understand what the question is?
But yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And it is true. I did forgive my girlfriend who cheated on me, and we're still friends. But I would say that in order to prevent something like that from happening, I would sort out those concerns in the first place. So, like, if I were ever to date a girl again, I would probably, like, take her to a restaurant or somewhere comfortable and have a big checklist of, like, are you going to be the type that doesn't like the way that I brush my teeth? If so, we're not going to get together. Are you going to be the type that doesn't like it when I'm hanging out with platonic female friends? If so, we're not going to date. And just sort out the what ifs. And if there's even one thing that's off, I'll be like, all right, we're staying friends. But then I also wouldn't even bother having that conversation if I had any doubts that we wouldn't still be friends. So I'd say, like, I'm not even going to try to date you if you're the type that is just going to leave me. So you're in it for the long run, or I'm not even going to give you my time. I'm not going to waste my time trying to date you when you won't even try to be my friend.
Talk me through the process of forgiveness. If you're okay with kind of go,
Yeah.
you don't have to go too in depth, right? I want to understand how like what makes it so difficult for ISTJs to leave a relationship even when something happened to that degree.
Well, part of it is me being Catholic, but I'll try to give a secular answer for the sake of you understanding it on an intellectual level. My chest starts hurting if I don't forgive enough because I'm holding on to the anger, and scientifically, that's causing problems. I'm having chest palpitations. I'm like all of a sudden feeling bad, and I'm just filled with so much regret that I lost a friend, and I'm losing all the great stuff that that friend had to offer, and I'm like recalling when that friend maybe gave good advice or was really supportive, and I'm just like, you know what? It would be more beneficial to both of us if I forgave than if I kept holding on to this anger because that could be affecting my health and affecting my comfort, and it could be good for the other person too. And that's the simplest answer I can think of, really.
Let's get the non-simple answer.
The non-simple answer is that I tend to value each and every one of my friends, and I would just absolutely love it if I had like a genie and I could make a wish. I would love it if like every single person I've ever met in my life I could get along with. And it saddens me if even one person decides to leave my life. So after we're done with this Zoom call and say we don't talk for another 5 years, it's probably gonna make me devastated, but I'll have to accept that that's reality for you. You can't just keep talking to everyone.
Yeah, dude, you just email me. Like if I'm the type of person where out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, exactly. But whereas for me, like when I'm saying my nighttime prayers, I try to pray for every single friend by name, and then I always feel terrible if I forget even one person. And as a result, because there's this need to just be there for my friends unconditionally, I'm hard on myself whenever I can't fulfill that need. So if, for example, I tell my friend I'm going to be there at 3 and I do all the usual logistical stuff to make it happen, but then say like, I don't know, I get bitten by a dog and that causes me to limp a little bit, I will blame myself for not noticing that dog, as opposed to trying to make a bunch of excuses like maybe an INFJ might do. Because I'll say, I should have been better because I'm the most dependable person in the universe and I couldn't even notice a simple.
Yeah, that makes sense in this context. Personally, I think that's ridiculous that you would blame yourself that much for the externality that happened by chance. But I
Well,
understand.
I do have a therapist who's trying to talk me out of it, thankfully.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, and I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. In the scenario, it hurts you more to potentially lose someone that you have a bond with than to be with a person that wrongs you to a certain degree.
Yeah, because I would have said that I wasted all that time creating a connection and then that connection's gone. That's why I often, like, say if I meet someone at a conference and that person asks for my number, I'll be like, don't even bother if you're not going to stay in touch.
That is very powerful for me to hear. Very powerful. As an INTJ, I am constantly battling a need to distance myself from the people that I currently have because there's this force or there's this thing in my head telling me, hey, like you need to branch out, you need to continue growing, and you can't keep growing if you keep continuously doing the same thing with the same people. So it's very powerful for me as the opposite perceiving type to hear how it affects you as a person when like people come and go.
Yeah, it's devastating when I think back on some of the greatest moments of my life and I'm like, dang it, I met so many people and yet hardly any of them even care about me anymore and a lot of them have blocked me and I'm just like, how the heck can you move on? And that's one thing that I've been thinking about, like if I were to get into a relationship, it's like, how many of my friendships am I going to have to compromise so that I can be faithful to my wife? Because that was a deal breaker for me when I was with my first girlfriend. I just said, do not ask me to compromise my friendships with my other female friends because I care about them a lot and I do not want to have to like tell them off for hanging out because I have to be with you more. Kind of, it wouldn't mean that I'd like cheat on her or commit adultery or anything like that. Again, loyalty. But I would also say like if I want to hang out with them, if I want to hug them in a platonic sense, like I don't want you to stop me. And I told her the same thing. I said, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I want you to be able to have guy friends and be able to hang out with them and hug them. And that ended up working out to my detriment because she hung out with that guy too much and then proceeded to cheat on me.
Yeah, yeah.
That might have been just me being naive, but um,
I went through
typical.
the same thing. I went through the same thing.
Yeah.
INTJs are loyal if we give them the loyalty. I mentioned it before. I did date an ISTJ before, and her loyalty was never questioned. After a while, once I developed more as an adult, not necessarily just INTJ, yeah, it was as clear to me as day. It was like, okay, I trust this person without a doubt.
And
Yeah, this person would rather leave me first than to cause me that much pain, if that makes sense.
I think so, yeah, because I often think of things in terms of like contractual obligations. So I would say stuff like, if hypothetically I were to ever cheat on you, then I would give you permission to do this punishment on me. And sometimes the punishments would be really extreme. Like I'd say like, if I ever cheat on you, kick me between the legs as hard as you can. And then people are like, no way am I going to do that. I'm like, yes way you do that because I'm going to be the most dependable person in the universe, and if I fail, I deserve punishment.
Is that do you believe that loyalty is an ISTJ trait, or you think that's a trait that you develop as a person, as a Catholic, as your life, how you were raised?
I don't know. I have no idea. I just think that that's something that because I was kicked out of school and that was a really hard moment for me because I had to like go from being the most popular person in school to having basically no friends in the span of a very short time. And I had to like readjust my entire way of thinking because by the time I started interacting with people on a regular basis again, I was high school age because I was homeschooled after I was kicked out of school, so grades are a bit of a murky subject. And I had a panic attack first time I ever hung out with high schoolers. And so I had to be like, okay, now that their brains have developed, now I have to think of all these factors. Whereas before I was hanging out with people that were like 5 or 6 years old and they had a completely different way of thinking than a 16-year-old did.
Mhm.
And as I started adjusting to how they thought, I started realizing that I liked hanging out with these people and I appreciated their loyalty and how they put up with my struggles. So I said, maybe I should do the same thing in return. I could be wrong, but that's where I think it came from.
Okay, okay. Do you believe that you are a good person?
That's a tough one because I think like if you were to like look at the catechism, I probably fit most of the checklists, but in terms of like am I doing perfect? Heck no. But also like the world standards of good person seem to be like subjective between each person. Like some people think that in order to be a good man, you gotta be bulky. So like maybe by like the average gym guy, I'm not a good person. But then I know other people at the gym that are like constantly singing my praises and stuff like that. So it's like I don't know who to trust besides God. And I guess that's why like if I weren't religious, I don't think I'd have a clue what I was doing in life, honestly, because you know what Linda Barron says about like all the NTs and SJs are systematic. They need some kind of system to operate, or else they're completely clueless.
Let me rephrase this question. Do you feel like you're a good person?
I don't even know how to. I don't even know how to think about that because I don't see being a good person as an emotional thing. I see it as are you dependable? Are you loyal? Are you following all the rules? Are the cops not going to put you in jail? Um, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so there's an external factor that determines that has to be um, verified or checked with in order to determine whether you believe that you yourself are is a good person.
Yeah, like even if I were to like sometimes when I like try to think about like what will happen after I die, and I firmly believe that there's going to be an afterlife and there's going to be a judgment, I try to think to myself like what would I say? And usually the first thing that comes to my mind is that I'll get down on one knee, bow down and just said, "Lord, I await your judgment.
Mm.
If you think I did bad, then go ahead and punish me." Like just this complete, I have no idea if I was good or not. I looked at through the catechism, I looked through the Bible, I looked through all the rules, and if I still failed, then it's time for a beating. I almost cried there because uh, destiny's eternal. It's hard to think about something that's eternal.
Does it matter to you if you're a good person?
Oh yeah, heck yeah. If I'm not a good person, then my life is meaningless.
It's really interesting talking to an ISTJ about topics that is geared toward introverted feeling, because I've noticed that you're having a more difficult time talking about this topic than earlier when we were focused on extroverted thinking, we were focused on introverted sensing. And it's very interesting because your response to it is similar to how most INTJs would respond to the conversation of FI. It's so difficult to communicate it because we want to wholeheartedly believe that we are something, but there's the extrovert thinking side of it. But we need some type of objective measurement system in order to verify it, in order to be like, okay, we really like we are this or we aren't this. Introverted feeling, since we're on the topic, how would you describe it?
I'm just a very emotional person, but most people don't see that. Like most people see me as, well, I think my mom thinks that I'm a relatively emotional person. It's just that she thinks that like what makes me emotional is like something that no one else does, or like when everyone else in the room is emotional, I won't get it because I'll like be quoting all the facts. Like if everyone else is like, "Oh my gosh, why is that driver being so stupid? Like how the heck could you cut me off?" I'll be like, don't you guys realize that yelling all that much is just wasting adrenaline, and all the science says that it's not good to be shouting that much, especially since the person can't hear you through the windows and like, Paul, this is an emotional moment. What are you talking about?
It's interesting because you talk about, oh, you're comparing with science. I compare it with just stoicism. This is the philosophy behind it is that it's not going to change anything. You know, you're comparing it,
Exactly.
yeah, you're comparing it to like hard concrete science. I'm comparing it to like a philosophical side of it. You know,
But
but
like, but yeah, no, I have like really, really intense emotions, but I usually prefer to express them when I'm alone or when I'm with a trusted friend. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that there are scientific benefits to expressing my emotions. So like I do try to go out of my way to like come across as an FP type more. I just don't think I'll ever be mistaken as an FP type because it's difficult even when I want to. Like there are times where I'll literally be like, okay, it's time for me to cry. It's time for me to completely make a mess of myself in public, and then the tears just won't come out. And I'll be like, I don't even know why. What the heck is wrong with me? Why can't I cry right now? And then that'll like convince me to want to do some kind of research. Is like, is it possible that something in my past happened that caused all the tear ducts in my brain to like dry up so that I'm incapable of crying?
yeah, I
So,
mean, biologically, we're both like males, and like men, right? Like we don't have tear ducts, so it's literally impossible for us to cry.
well, I was raised in a household that said that saying that men shouldn't cry is ridiculous. And my mom was like, if you feel like crying, don't feel ashamed of it. And
Mm,
she would also say, like, there are scientific benefits to crying, and like, you shouldn't ever feel like you have to suppress your emotions just because you're a man. But unfortunately, I ended up suppressing my emotions anyway, and I think it was like around 10 or some odd years ago that I finally just said, I'm just going to stop suppressing my emotions and I'm going to get to the point where I'm more okay with expressing them and I still feel miserably.
yeah.
Because I often, like I said, I often default to the facts. Like if I'm talking about something that's bothering me, I'll talk about the circumstances of it rather than talking about how I feel. Like someone might say like, "How's your day?" And I'll be like, "Well, it was raining a lot and I didn't really have a good umbrella, so I wasn't able to stay adequately dry," as opposed to like, "Oh my gosh, I feel terrible that I was drenched in water."
Hmm. Hmm.
Or like I might be, here's an actual example. My family was going through such a tough time that it made 2024 the worst year of my life. How did I word it to people though? I said, hey, my family is going through a tough time. It's not an issue of inheritance, it's an issue of people that are violating our rights. And it is really unfortunate that I'm not able to adequately protect my brother and, all that stuff. So it was like, it was more so defaulting to the facts working against us rather than like what I was actually feeling. But like if I was by myself in my room, I'd be, it would be way much easier for me to just start sobbing, and I wouldn't pound the bed because I'd be thinking about like how logically that's not a good idea.
Hmm.
Because even when I'm in the depths of despair, I think about the logical ramifications of like punching a pillow is scientifically not a good thing.
Not for you, but for me as an extroverted sensing user, it feels good. Like,
Hey,
breaking
I
stuff,
can
yeah,
occasionally do extroverted sensing stuff. Like I like roller coasters, I like wave pools, I like the occasional thrill. I just don't seek it out. I'll do it if like it's a bonus. Like, oh, okay, once a year I suppose I could do that, but I won't just like I won't be miserable if I don't ride my motorbike like maybe the ESTPs would be. Actually, I don't have a motorbike. I just made that up.
Okay, we're coming to the end of this video. There is a topic that I want to discuss that I believe will bring a lot of value to the community, especially with talking to ISTJs. Um, is there anything that you want to talk about before we get to that topic?
Yeah, we're a bunch of goofballs.
Like ISTJs?
Well, heck yeah. We deep
You
down
gotta have a laugh.
inside, deep down inside, all of us want to make you laugh, and we want to come up with the most insane out there ideas ever. We don't want to be compared to anyone. I want to say, like, I'm the first person in the universe to make this joke. I'm the very first person in the history of ever to have this kind of humor. And I want everyone doubling over laughing, being like, that is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life.
ISTJs have this tendency that I notice is very unique. It's well, first and foremost, right? ISTJs always talk about running away to the circus. Like some something about running away to the circus is like the most ridiculous thing for them that they're like, oh,
Eh, not for me, because I wouldn't like the smell of animal poop.
okay, yeah, but like there, it's very I think it's cute, right? Because like the ISTJ guys and girls in my life, they all do this. Where when they start engaging with extroverted intuition, they would make a joke and they'd make this like very stern laugh, like ha ha ha, laughing at their own joke. So
Yeah, I do that too. I
yeah,
think
it's so cute. It's
I
just like wow, you find yourself funny. I think it's
I
funny too, but you find yourself funny.
I do remember you making that comparison in the last video, and I never personally, even for a second, thought about joining the circus, but I would say there have been times where I've thought about being a stand-up comedian.
No, yeah.
Because I feel like I'm really good at improvising humor, and I remember when I was at my job, like I worked as a dishwasher as my very first job, and there were times where we just had no dishes to wash. So me and my coworker would start doing stand-up comedy in front of my boss, and she would just be laughing hysterically and be like, "Why do you guys not have a gig?"
Yeah. ISTJs are funny. Like
Yeah.
once you get to know them, there's definitely a humor side to them.
Oh yeah, heck yeah. And that's I've actually been mistaken as an ENFP. So that's how well I've tried to develop that side of me.
Yeah, it shows. Like you're very personable during this conversation, and also like you're. I feel like there's a lot of growth when an ICJ is able to understand intuitive questions, but then be able to answer it in a way that makes sense to you. If that makes sense. As in like the ISFJs I have in my life, they just cannot comprehend what I'm asking. It's for them, it's oh, he's asking this question, I don't understand it, I'm done.
Mm.
Like, I'm not even gonna try to get on the same level and then like answer it because since I don't understand like what's being asked, I'm just gonna ignore it and the answer isn't going to be presented. So I think
That's what I used to be like before I started hanging out with mostly intuitive friends. And then I
mm,
started to realize, okay, I gotta start learning how to talk nonsense.
yeah, that's how I feel when I engage with most sensitive. It's like, okay, sure, we'll talk about Love is Blind. Okay, sure, let's talk
What?
about what we ate.
Oh, the TV show.
Yeah, Love is Blind. Let's talk about what we ate. Oh, sure. Let's talk about what the Kardashians did or something. Things that I naturally wouldn't do myself that I know is value to them or something they care about. Okay, final question, because I do have to go. Let's hear your advice on this. I have an ENFP friend who had an ISTJ that was his groomsman. What do you call the highest guy in a wedding?
Best man?
Best man, there we go. So an ENFP and his best man was the ISTJ. Fred's since forever, or like forever, right? Like the ENFP, I remember telling me a story that he always felt super awkward, and then he met the ISTJ in a fraternity, and the ISTJ's recollection was, "Wow, this person is a mess. Let me help them." And then the friendship got developed. But recently there was a from my understanding, because I haven't had the chance to talk to ISTJ because I'm more close to the ENFP, like just in general, right? Not like personality wise. But what I was told was that the ISTJ blew up on the ENFP for something, and they haven't talked since. And the ENFP, when I asked, said that I didn't think it was that big of a problem, but out of the blue, like the ISTJ started saying all this stuff and then stopped responding to me trying to reach out to them. Can you explain to me what that potentially could be and how to avoid it or how to make up for it?
Um, Disloyalty was probably at play. Because I remember the last time I ever yelled at someone, and it was back in 2017, and it was because my female friend said, "Hey Paul, I have a boyfriend now, so I'm afraid we're gonna have to stop talking." And I just let her have it. I was just hollering and shouting at her, and I was like spitting on the phone, like, "How dare you just abandon me like that after I was giving you money to support you?" And I was like your best friend, and don't you realize how much trauma I've been through? And that just ended up making things worse, and it's one of my biggest regrets in life. So I think maybe if like the ENFP wasn't there for the ISTJ and the ISTJ felt like he was doing too much work, then he might have been like, "Why do you keep being late to our hangouts? Why is it that you can't respond to a simple text? Why did you forget what I just said? Why did you slobber ketchup down your mouth? Are you such an incompetent idiot that you can't get your act together?" Like, it's usually with regards to like loyalty and awareness to what's around them that are like the real annoying stuff to ISTJs. They're aware of everything. They expect everyone else to be aware of everything. So if the intuitives don't notice the stop sign, they'll be like, "How the heck did you get your driver's license if you're that blind?" So they'll use another objective metric to try to measure it because they'll say in driver's ed they say not to do that. So why do you have your driver's license if you're not following the rules? So that's my guess as to what happened. Hope that was a short enough answer because you said you had to go.
No, I mean, I was looking for a truthful answer, and you provided that. I
Good. Glad to
I
hear
feel
it.
like, yeah, it's just so interesting as
Well,
a
that's just a guess because there's some context missing.
yes.
But I'm trying to think of it from like if I was in that situation, what would cause me to do something that drastic? And I think if it was disloyalty or um, obliviousness, those would be the big things. Like, if I'm around someone who's just like constantly never paying attention to his or her surroundings, I'm going to be like, "Get me away from this person. You are driving me absolutely insane."
Okay.
Almost unfriended my former best friend as a result of that.
Really?
Yeah, because I was like, this guy is just so rude. He's not following any common courtesy protocols. He's not noticing anything. He's putting my life in danger because he's driving the wrong way on the street. I just don't think it's viable to be around him anymore. And then I realized I was being stupid. So then I said, well, I'll still talk to him. I'll just limit how much I talk to him. And now I don't call him my best friend anymore. Now I call him just my friend.
Gotcha. Sorry that happened. Final thoughts. At the end of the video, I want to give you the opportunity to speak to all ISTJs that might be watching this video. Younger, older, same life presence that you're in right now. Can't think of the word. What would you want to tell those ISTJs?
Good question, because like there's four different subtypes of ISTJs, so it depends on which one they are. Like if they're a harmonizing ISTJ, the type that wants to like protect their friends, then I would say like try not to be so good to your friends that you don't notice the good they're doing to you. If they're a normalizing ISTJ where they're more like, they want to reform the system or like do better in Congress, stuff like that, then I would say like take small steps. Like instead of changing the world, change your next door neighbor. Like ISTJs can be ambitious too. They're just not as ambitious as you guys. They're more short-term ambitious or like sensory ambitious. And if they're what was the other category? A stabilizing ISTJ? I'd say like it's okay to have some chaos. Like every now and then go to a water slide, go to a water park, have fun. Like, yes, it's okay to have a routine. I would be stupid to talk you out of it because I wouldn't want you to do the same thing to me, but like be okay with having at least some variety because that's going to help you make more friends and that's going to help you to overcome a lot of your chest pains that you feel because you could make a new friend that could potentially give you a new perspective on life and provide you with more facts. Maybe they'll present the facts in a way you never understood, and then you can be a better person. Because what ISTJ doesn't want to be a better person.
Beautifully said.
Did that
Beautifully.
make sense? Because I was trying to appeal to all four subtypes.
I'm sure it did. It made sense to me. I'm sure it
Okay,
made sense
that's
to them
good.
as well. Yeah. Okay, this is the end of the video. Thank you again, Paul, for being here. Thank you for dealing with all the ridiculous questions that I have. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for providing us insight into the mind of an ISTJ. Again, one of my favorite types. Most INTJs online say they don't like ISTJs, but for me, one of the easiest to actually have a similar understanding with. Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Bye, everyone.